Australia is a big country. Australia is also a land shaped by wildfire in many places. Join me as we travel around this great country, meeting people and talking with them, and together their stories will come together and help us better explain Australia's complex relationships with wildfire. Welcome to Talking Wildfire Australia, my friends. Okay, hi and welcome. This is James Cole. We met in Tasmania several years ago on fire. James has a really unique background, from military to fire to things he does in Africa, and a lot of what he does is connected around horses. And so James is also really good at leading people and small group tactics. James, can you tell us a bit about how to get the best out of your people and teams?
Yeah, sure. Getting the best out of my people. Well, when you've got a crew that runs in front of you and you're standing in front of you for the first time, you sort of work out who they are and what their personas are. Now, you're getting blokes from all sorts of walks of life. In their own worlds, they think they're top dog, and then they're sort of chucked together, and there's going to be some rivalry and competition amongst that crew. As you stand there looking at these fellas, you got like your beta males. They all sort of don't want to be leaderships. They don't want to step up to be leaders. They just rather be led. Not to say they're not invaluable. They're just good workers and that, and they're more comfortable being told what to do than trying to step them up to the plate to take control. Then you got your alpha males. They sort of want to take control of everything and be top dog. Alphas are always extroverts. They thrive on people noticing them, which, when you look at that, in a situation where it's preservation of life and property and high intense situation that comes in, that might be the best way to handle it when you've got a bloke who's more interested in putting himself forward and look at me, I'm a hero sort of thing. And he's going to start neglecting his workmates, and if he's a leader, he's not going to be putting his men first, instead he's going to put himself first. Then I find the best leaders that come out of these fellas would be your sigma males, and they're very similar to an alpha, but they're introverts and they're not about me. They don't thrive on people giving them what's the word I'm looking for, accolades, and it's not what they want in life. They thrive more on excellence and doing the job the best of their ability. And quite often a Sigma doesn't really want to be a leader, but he will step up to the plate when asked to be a leader, and he'll do it to the best of his abilities, because Sigmas are normally working on perfection and doing the job. So you have all these different types of people standing in front of you. Again, I'll go back to the horse breaking and horses. So in the horse world, you've got a mob of horses standing there, and there's a pecking order. So you've got the bottom of the pack all the way up through to the alpha, the most dominant horse. Now, every horse in that mob of horses, from the day they're born to the day they die, are jostling for a position to be top dog. Because when you move up that pecking order, you get better feed, you get better water, you get better protection, right? So as a breaker, when I came into a mob of horses, and so I normally break, say, roughly 5, 6, 7 horses at a time. And so I've got a mob of horses there, and they're always jostling for position to be the most dominant. But when I step in, I've got to be dominant and take control of the whole mob. So what I normally do is you take control of that and trying to make an equalising situation for all the different attitudes, I suppose. You take them down to one level, and you take it down through work, fitness, and discipline. Right? So if one bloke steps out of line, you've got to discipline them. But it's not that one bloke you just discipline, you discipline them the whole lot. Because you'll find that, you go back from the horses back to the men, say in Africa when I'm running my blokes, I have one troublemaker stand up there. When he screws up, if he's showing disrespect, he's also showing disrespect to all the unit, the rest of the fellas, and to me. But for me to have control and to stay in control, the whole lot has to do like 50 push-ups. Not the bloke, not only the bloke who has done the misdemeanor or the offence, but the whole crew does. If that bloke keeps doing that, what you'll find is the rest of the crew will start disciplining him, because they don't want to be doing push-ups. They don't want to be doing, every time he stuffs up, they're all doing push-ups because of him. So you'll find they'll all turn and keep him in line and go from there. But again, we go back to the fitness side of stuff. When you're pushing these blokes during a fitness exercise, you'll find out who's going to give up, who's the weakest, who's got the determination to push through, who's going to try and fake it. Like when I turn away, he'll probably stop doing push-ups. When I turn back, he's back into the push-ups. I know what's going on. So would he be a bloke you would trust? If you turn your back, give him a tasking, if he's going to take the easy route out all the time, okay, and you give him a tasking, can you trust him to do the job? But if he's with the other crew members, they're going to keep him honest. Right? So if he stuffs up, you punish the rest of them with him, and so they'll turn around and keep him honest. And so you bring him back down to one level. And then you're talking about the weaker members of the unit. Well, you've got to try and build them up and give them confidence. That comes back to where I'd give them encouragement to give them a topic to talk about something, stand in front of everyone. Everyone's got to do it, so not the only odd man out, but it helps them to be able to communicate, give them the confidence to handle situations. I'll give them small taskings that I know they can achieve to build their confidence, and I sort of extend that tasking next time so they've got a little bit more responsibility they've got to do. If they start getting stuck, as a leader, I'm there to help them and give them that push through all the time. I remember one time in Africa, there was a lady, a girl there, Lady Ranger, and on the ground around horses she was good. She'd feed them, water them, she'd brush them down, groom them, but she's petrified to sit on the back of a horse. Right? So, but she wanted to, desperately wanted to sit on the back of a horse, and so while I was over there, I sort of got a quiet horse, and I didn't tell her I was going to do it, but I had the blokes all around me, and I was showing the parts of the horse and that sort of stuff, and I asked her to come in and point out certain parts of this horse, and all of a sudden I just grabbed her and put her on top, and she freaked out. But once she got over the initial shock that she wasn't going to get hurt, and she wasn't going to get, well, she thought she was going to die. Every time, that's why she didn't get on there, because she's seen how a horse could buck, and she had this thing in her head that every time if she's ever going to get on a horse, that's what she's going to end up like, on the dirt, busted up. But she had to, sometimes, you got to push someone through a barrier like that to make them realise it's all good to go through. And everything was safe. So I had blokes I positioned other fellas on the other side to hold her on, hold the horse. And after the initial shock, when she realised it was all good and she wasn't going to die, she enjoyed it. And lo and behold, next day she got back on. I asked her again, you want to jump on? Yeah, no worries, get back on, loved it. But she didn't want to walk the horse, she only just sat there. So the next step we grew from that, and I took the horse forwards a couple of steps. The bloke's holding her. She was panicking and petrified about it. But once she achieved that, she realised she wasn't going to die. And then we take it a bit further, and that's how we can grow little steps at a time and help someone gain confidence. And then even out of that step, where she had the confidence to get back on a horse then, in her personal life, you see the confidence growing there, where she had a better attitude, she had a better step to herself, like as in pride. She walked a lot better, she's happier. You can see the total difference in breaking through that barrier.
James, can you talk a bit about how you look at a person's whole life and about how what you do can affect their bigger life when you're building them up, or if you decided to break them down?
As a leader, we have a responsibility for the bloke standing in front of us. How we lead will dictate on how those blokes will lead their lives. So for argument's sake, if I was a leader that pulled a bloke down and was a bad leader, said he was no good, useless, had no time for him to help him better himself, didn't give him responsibilities, then he's going to have this attitude in the back of his head thinking that he is no good. He has no confidence to do anything. So then his path of his life is going down a dark street, because essentially as a leader I would have set him up for that. Whereas if I took that same bloke and I led a different style where I built his confidence, I gave him opportunities, I know he's going to make mistakes, but we work through those mistakes and then help him rectify them, build his character, honesty. Let him know it's all right, you can make mistakes, just tell me so we can fix it. We all make mistakes. Common sense, integrity, honour, respect's a big thing. Developing that respect for leaders and leaders developing that respect for their workers. So then you build his attitude up that's going down a street that's lit and a better way of life. So again, opening doors for him, whereas you go the other way, if you're a bad leader, you're going to be closing doors for this bloke and he's just basically destroying him.
Why would you care?
Well, wouldn't be human if I didn't care for a start, I suppose. And there's multiple reasons. If we're going to do a job that's got, for a start, why are we doing the type of jobs in the first place where it's firefighting, where we're looking after preservation of life and property, like the jobs in Africa where we're running anti-poaching units, preservation of life, protecting property for the good. Stuff like in Iraq where we're helping people, saving life as much as we can to help. So basically for blokes like you and I, it's already in our DNA to help. And we see someone who we can help as a leader, and it's natural that we can sort of go and build them up instead of, throw them to the rubbish tip. Especially in this day and age where, in society that we have, there's not a lot of leadership, good leadership about. Everyone's sort of out for themselves. And, I think because of the family structure nowadays where there is a lot of broken families, boys grow up not being men. They're still growing up to be adult boys, so to speak. And they haven't had that guidance on how to have respect for themselves, dignity, honour, and to be leaders of their families and lead themselves, as we discussed before. So when it comes to this sort of work that you and I are doing as leaders, I think we owe it to the community, for the people out there, to stand in that gap in the wall where so few people are afraid to stand now, and be the shining light for those young men who are looking for leadership, looking to learn how to be a leader. And if we can help in any which way we can to develop a good society, instead of a society where you've got all these young blokes walking down this dark road because they've been torn down through bad leadership. So, and that's where that is at.
How about respect? You talked a little bit about respect before. I know that's an important thing with you, but how would you build respect inside of the team so that the team respected each other and others that they're around?
The team respects each other. Well, we got to have an understanding of what command control is all about. I don't think you can have respect for anyone else until you've got respect for yourself and know what it is to have respect for yourself. So for argument's sake, if you want to go out there and drink yourself silly every night, do drugs or floozy around, that's not respecting yourself. And no one's going to respect you for that. What's your self-worth? Self-worth is something that I can stand there in front of someone and they turn around and say, well, I can trust you. I know you've got my back. I know you're not going to do me in. You know, I know your word is your word. You know, I know that whatever you say you're going to do, you're going to do it to the best of your ability with what you've got for where you're at. So again, the bloke's got to learn to have respect for himself. Clean yourself up, have a shave. Make sure you have a wash every night. It doesn't take much to go down. You know, people make a lot of excuses. Say, oh, I've got no shower or running water. Well, I live out in the bush for most of my life. I always have a shower or wash at the end of the day, whether it's in a dam, creek line, you know, you always find a bit of water. And it's always good to spend a bit of time, have respect for yourself, to clean yourself up, to not to be lazy. You know, again, it comes back to fitness. Like every morning, I do a fitness run every morning by myself. I don't need to go in the gym because I have respect for myself and the taskings that I know that I've got to do that day. And if I'm not fit, then I'm not going to have respect for the horses that I'm trying to work, because I expect my horses to be fit that I'm working. And I think it's unfair if I'm going to be unfit and I expect them to be fit. So even when I'm breaking horses and that, for me, I think having respect for the animals that I'm working, I've got to be fit too. You know, I put myself in that same mindset as they've got to be in if I expect them to do something. The same with those blokes, you know. And I lead by example. So I'm not going to tell my blokes to do 100 push-ups if I'm not going to do them. So I'll go down and do it with them. You know, one in all in, build that respect for each other. Know that we got each other's back. Know that we're there for each other. It's building a family dynamic.
Yeah, you're creating a team.
Creating a team.
Yeah.
And it becomes more than a team. And you know this, you know, that, you know, the bond that you build through these units that you make. Mm-hmm. You know. And it's funny, like, I think in the civilian world, they don't get it. Because a lot of time the bonds are made stronger through arduous times, taskings. You know, when we've got to get down in the dirt, and the only bloke that we're relying on is the bloke next to us, you know, that we've been trained with, and we worked with, we fight with, you know, and we come out the other end with. And that builds that glue, I think, and that respect for each other. Yeah. And I think that's very important. We come back to the spirit to core, you know. It is elusive in the civilian world that they don't understand how we can build such a tight-knit team. But they're the teams that can go through hell and back and, you know, do the jobs. And
so esprit de corps is a good thing, you say?
I think it's an integral part. It's the glue that holds everything together. I mean, you tear blokes down, like as a leader, you tear them down to build them back up. And as you're building them up, they're building that spirit de corps with them. They're their family. They might have every crew has their little spits and spats amongst them, but I can guarantee you, if you got another crew coming in trying to nail one of their blokes, this crew is going to defend him because they're family. Yeah? They come to my crew and fight my crew. We're going to take it on.
Speaking of that, with competition, but if we could talk about that for a moment, like when you have competition inside the crew or competition external, like you were just talking about external, but what could you say about internal?
Well, internal competition, there's a healthy competition and there's unhealthy competition. Mm-hmm. Right? I expect my blokes to push themselves. So you probably break that even more. There's a competition within yourself to better yourself each day than what you were yesterday. That's a competition. So if I did 50 push-ups yesterday, I'm going to compete against myself and do 53 push-ups today and try and better myself. So you've got two blokes in your team. There's a healthy competition where they bounce off each other So one bloke's doing 50 push-ups and say, oh, I'm going to do 52 push-ups, or I'm going to do 53 push-ups. It's only building them up. And if it's done in the spirit of mateship and team bonding, not a problem. Encourage it all the time. Go wrestle. I mean, part of masculinity is that we get down and wrestle, carry on and spar each other. That's what men do. And it's all about training it. But where it becomes unhealthy is where one's trying to step on top of the other to get somewhere else and using someone else's ability as a platform for their own benefit. And that competition is not real crash hot.
What would you do if you saw it?
Well, I'd find out what the situation is for a start. Why are you doing that to him? And I'd take it in personally. The whole, it's if it's a personal issue, it doesn't need to be broadcasted everywhere. And I'd sit down and talk about it. Why do you want to get where you're going by using him? How do you feel about it, and talk about it, take control of the situation. How you solve, well, there's any number of different ways you can solve the problems. Sometimes
would you have them both there together?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would.
Well, we'd have to, otherwise, it's tit for tat. And he said,
Yeah.
if you got something to say, you say it in front of him. If you got something to say, you say it in front of him.
Yeah.
Let's get it out. If you really want to get it out, there's boxing gloves in the back room there. Draw a circle and get in on it. Get it out of your system, sort it out. And then we'll get back and do our tasking, because there's more important things in this life, like, again, preservation of life and property and what we're here to do, than to fight amongst each other. If you haven't got his back and you haven't got his back, I can't take you on the fire line, or I can't take you into the firefight. When you at odds each other, sort it out. Mm-hmm. And there'll be a solution there somewhere. 9 times out of 10 it'll be like, just go to the pub and have a drink.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they forget about it, shake hands, and wake up to each other. But sometimes it happens, because you've got young blokes. You've got a lot of young blokes in there who are still finding their way in life, who are trying to find out where their boundaries are. It's a bit like a horse. A horse will push you all the time to find out where his boundaries are. If you don't give them boundaries, they're going to keep going and going and going. Before long, it's like a runaway car. Mm-hmm. You've got to catch up to them and pull them back in. But the same thing with crews. This is the boundaries. These are the rules of engagements, lads. If you're going to do this and you're going to do that, then there's the door, get out. But if you're going to behave yourselves, you're going to do your jobs, have things respectfully done, then crack on. But these are your rules, these are the boundaries you don't step out of.
Well, James, we talked earlier about endurance, and we were talking about sometimes when you're in Africa, you have to ride for really long periods of time, or your troops are with you, and a lot of the troops you started out green. Yeah. And so how do you help build endurance, and how do you monitor and help the team?
So endurance, again, that's another topic that's fairly big. One way I do start the endurance is come back to fitness. So PT every morning, and you're pushing their boundaries, you're pushing their mental blocks. So I play a bit of psyops with them in their minds. So if I'm doing star jumps, I'll count 20 out, and then I'll count another 20 out, and I do it by blocks of 20. And every time I come to 20, I make as if I'm going to stop the star jumps. And they're all starting, last one. And then I start counting again, so they go back into it. So what I'm doing is, where they're expecting to stop, I'll keep going. And they've got to keep going. Otherwise, if they stop, if someone stops, everyone else will keep doing star jumps until he starts again. Then I'll start the count again. So in their mind, they know, they don't know how long the star jumps are going to go for, right? So they're not second guessing, and they've just got to keep going until I say stop. And I could do it for I did one session there where I did 1,500 star jumps in one hit.
Wow.
Right? We were all staffed.
Yeah.
I was doing it with them.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, and it's funny because I know they're hurting because they start giggling. That's what the Rangers do over the blackfellas. I know when they're starting to hurt, they start laughing, but they're building each other up. They're talking to each other through it. And you see them start, and then again you'll see blokes who can take the initiative. they see one of their mates over there starting to hurt, so he starts talking to him. Come on, mate, and they start helping each other on. They start talking to each other, building that spirit to core again, and becoming tighter.
That's good. So they're helping each other.
Helping each other to get through it.
That's like matesmanship.
Yeah. What we all got to realise, everything's finite. There's an ending to everything. We're going to die. The grass is going to die. Everything's going to stop. Push-ups are going to stop. Right? So it's conditioning your mind to know that it's going to stop, and you're going to keep going until your body gives out, but your mind's not going to give out. And getting that mental condition. So that's why we do that sort of fitness sort of stuff. And then, we start off with medium endurance runs, leading the horses and riding them on and off, on their backs, running. Have a little spell. I regulate them, not so much, well, man and beast. I've got to look after the horses too, because if in the heat and the arduous terrain that we're working in, I've got to make sure the horses aren't overheating. But also I've got to make sure the blokes aren't going to go down with dehydration, and make sure they're drinking water. So to freshen them up every now and then, I'll probably run them through a river and out the other side and keep going.
So you have them running along, and then you have them jumping on the horse, riding the horse,
and
then
jump
off and run.
Yeah, and keep running to build endurance.
Yeah.
And again, I do not tell them how long we're going for.
Yeah.
And like one day I might do 3 hours of that. Next day I might do 5 minutes. I don't tell them how long they're going for. So we get on there, righto boys, we're going again, saddle up, we're out of here, we start running down. I probably get through the front gate, I turn around, right, we're going home. They'll look at each other, righto. Next day we do a 3-hour run. They're expecting to stop at the front gate, but they're gone out for 3 hours. And they come back.
I guess something else, James, is when you're operational and you're through the training and you're out in the field and you're on a long march for a lot of hours, what do you do to make sure everyone's okay during that time?
Just a matter of assessing all the troopers, all the blokes. I walk down the line. Again, communication. How you going? You all right? What's your water like? You had enough water? I rest the blokes every 2 hours, 2.5 hours. The thing is the reason why we train them like this and this hard is if we're on patrol, if I say we've got a 2-day patrol we're running, okay, if nothing happens, it's going to be 2 days. If we get into a firefight, or if we get into a situation where we've got to chase someone, well, I don't know how long we're going to be out in the bush for, right? So it could be 2 days minimum. If we get into a contact, it might end up being 4 days out in the bush chasing and tracking. So if we turn around and put a finish point in our head, say, oh, we're out here for 2 days and that's it, these blokes are going out, well, it's 2 days, I want to go home. But now these blokes are going out, they don't know how long they're out for, and they're prepared themselves mentally that they could be out there for a week flat. Mm-hmm. But they know they're going to come back because everything's finite. They'll be finished with this patrol sooner or later. We'll be either forced back through food and water, or we do our job, or we just finished our patrol. They know they're coming back.
And the horses, are you monitoring them also?
Yeah, the blokes are taught how to monitor their own horses.
So they're monitoring their own, and you're monitoring them.
Yep, and the situation of the environment that we're in, so situation awareness of the environment, the weather patterns, the heat, how much feed we got, where the water. Water's a big problem. A lot of our routes are dictated by where the watering points are for the horses, mainly for the horses. We carry 3 litres on ourselves for a day, and we set up resupply points out in the bush. They drop off caches and that to resupply ourselves, food and water. But water for the horses is a big thing, especially when it gets hot over there. So we regulate that. We look at the horses, see what the temperatures are, see if they're breathing too hard. We get off and run with the horses. See, a lot of things are done. People got an image of cavalry units operating through the image of Hollywood. They see these big movies and horses been galloping for 4 hours, have 50 miles, That's not how it works. The cavalry unit will get off their horses and they will run with their horses to save their horses. Because if we ride our horses all day, and at the end of the day those horses are tired. All of a sudden we get into a contact, we need to utilise our horses, but we can't because the horses are knocked up. So we've got to save our horses as much as we can. So quite often in rough terrain, we'll ride on the easy parts, then we'll get off, we'll run with our horses. That's why fitness is important. We don't just sit on our horses all day, every day. So the endurance in the mind that we've got to have. We know we've got to get from point A to point B. We've got to save our horses. We've got to look after ourselves. We've got to be mentally conditioned and toughened to be able to do this tasking. And this is why you get a cav unit operating, the workload mentally on these blokes and physically and the fitness levels that these fellas got to have to maintain this unit. Expectancy of staying in the unit would be like 12 months, a little bit better, but definitely they'll be knocked up. They're just worn down. They've got to go away and have a spell, reboot, then they can come back and do another 12 months in the cab unit. Otherwise you just tear yourself up, because mentally you've got to be tough and conditioned.
That makes sense. That'd be wearing on people.
Very wearing. And it's like anything, you've been on a fire ground for how many weeks? Mm-hmm. You got to look at your blokes and say, right, about time we pulled off and rest
same
these
in
fellas.
Afghanistan or Iraq, you have to go on R&R.
Fighting, because of the mental stress, especially for crew leaders. I mean, any leader who's worth his salt, he should literally have a migraine every day, thinking about all the things he's got to think about in managing a crew, managing the situation, managing the weather, managing supplies, managing equipment, assessing this, second guessing or preempting situations, looking at the weather, seeing which way the wind's blowing, how far away that fire front is, the time of impact on where he is he got everything in place to fight that fire, what the flame height's going to be at that time of impact, whether he's got enough safety areas put in place for his crew to go back to if needed be, and what air support or dozer support, ground support he's got to do it. So, when you're doing that constantly, it does wear you down. It just wears you down mentally. You've got to have that spell. And knowing that as a leader, you also you've got to rest your blokes. So yeah.
Well, James, thanks for coming out today. And is there anything you'd like to add at the end?
No, I think leadership's such a big topic, and I think at the end of the day, there's a whole heap of different perspectives. And I think also that the type of work you do produces a certain type of leader. As I was saying before, that if you've got a work environment where it's high octane, that leader will be different compared to someone who's a leader of a desk or something like that, in an office job. I think understand the environment you're in, what your tasking is as a leader, look at your crews, assess them appropriately, have respect for the situation, for yourself and your men, and go from there.
Well, James, thank you.
No worries.
We're doing this for all of you. If you like what we're doing, please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment below. See you next time.